But what if we want to make this a little more complex? What if we want to make or add a few extra animation states to give our character some personality? Well, that's where those extra animations from Mixamo come in. So what I'm going to get you to do is navigate to your character, character animations. And here we can see all the armature animations, such as the jumping, falling, running, jogging, idle, etc. I want to go to my animations folder and I want to take the sad idle and the sword and shield slash that I got from Mixamo, and I want you to drag and drop them in. If you don't have either of those animations, type them in as you see them here into Mixamo and you can find them. There we go. Now that I have my sad idle and my sword and shield slash, I need to first click on sad idle. Let's work from left to right. Go to rig, change it from generic to humanoid, apply, and then head on over to animation tab and rename this animation right here, the symbol from mixamo.com to Fidget. Great. Now, for this animation as well, you can see down the bottom that we can hit play and it will show us the animation in motion. If for whatever reason this is missing, it might be minimized. And if your character is pink, you may need to hit this little blue armature man here and say Unity model. It might be on this one. Great. Now, it is looping in the preview, but it will not be looping in the actual animation. To make the animation loop, I need to tick on loop time. And I'm going to tick on loop pose. The other thing I'm going to do is tick bake root transform rotation and root transform position. Bake. Then I'm going to scroll down and hit apply. What these do is it swaps your animation from using root motion, which means it uses the actual skeleton and the rotation and position of your skeleton to dictate movement in the game world, or just use your character's default position and rotation. Two slightly different concepts which we will discuss later, root motion versus non-root motion. At this point we need to do the same for the sword and shield slash, so I will click on that, go to rig, swap it to a humanoid, apply, go to the animation, change the name from Mixamo to attack. Now we don't want the attack to loop, because why would you want a looping attack? That would probably not be ideal. But if I hit play, you may want to consider, again, the root is quite literally moving our character forward. So I will likely want to bake the pose and bake the rotation and hit apply. Now you'll see the character's still stepping off, but it's not actually thrusting the character forward with the pose. Now we may need to come back to this and tweak a few properties if it looks weird when we get around to adding it. But for now, we will leave that as is. Okay, great. Well, now that we have that in, I need to go back to my scene. And you'll see I'm still in this armature window. To get back to your scene, you need to hit this little back button that's hidden all the way at the top left. Now what we want to do is open in the animations folder. There is this thing that has a different icon to everything else, and this is an animator controller, or you may have heard it being called a state machine. I want you to double click on that. Now, a state machine is a series of states that have conditions that run between them. See here, these arrows are conditions. Now, the state enters into what is called a blend space. Unity has set this up for us already. It has an idle, which transitions to a walk, which transitions to a run, depending on the variable speed. So when speed increases, so too does the transition between each of these. They blend. So if you blend between an idle and a walk, you get like a slow walk. And if you blend between a walk and a run, you get like a jog. Now, depending on certain conditions, we can go from idle, walk, or run into a jump, or straight into falling by these conditions. For example, is jumping true? Well, if it is, start the jump. Then, once the jump animation is finished, go into our falling pose. Or, if I were not to jump, but just simply walk straight off an edge, then free fall is true, and I go into my falling pose. Now, when I'm in my falling pose, and grounded is true, I go into my landing pose, and then back to the idle. Now, these conditions, right, this jump equals true, this free fall equals true, and this grounded equals true, they are all operated in code, right? We can set them here, but we cannot create the functionality for them here. That has to be done in C#. So what we want for our fidget is a new state. So I want you to right click, say create state, empty, and left click on the state, rename it up the top right, fidget. Then I want you to find your fidget, which is this sad idle. We're going to open that up with the arrow, grab the fidget animation, and drag and drop it in motion. And then we are going to connect the transitions here by first right clicking on fidget, saying make transition, then left clicking on the orange node, then right click on the orange node, make transition, left click on the fidget node, then right click on the fidget node, make transition into the jump start. Now the reason for this is if we're idle, we want to be able to go into fidget. From fidget, we also want to be able to cancel it and go back into idle, walk, or run. Now from fidget, we also want to be able to cancel the fidget by starting a jump. Otherwise, what will happen is your character will start swinging his feet and you'll hit jump and it won't go into the jump pose and it will look really silly. Okay, great. Now we need conditions though, because this is not enough. It doesn't know how to enter fidget or how to exit fidget. So we're going to add up the top here under this parameters tab, plus add a boolean, a true or false statement, and we're going to call it fidgeting. Now with that boolean created, we can now use it as a trigger condition. So I want you to click on the enter transition for fidget, and I want you to add this condition here by hitting the plus and setting it to fidgeting. Fidgeting is true, then it enters the fidget state. The one underneath, I want you to add a condition, the exit transition, and say fidgeting is false. Now for the jump start, much like this one here, going from idle or walk, run into jump, we want to do the same when jump is true. So let's go to our fidget to jump, add jump true. Great, now this is all set up, however we've got nothing in code turning this fidget ball on and off, and that means that this fidget will never actually run until we do that. So let's hit Control S to save, and let's navigate to third person, scripts, and double click on our third person controller script. Now that we're in Visual Studio, we can start programming or modifying this existing script that Unity have made for us. So first off, we need a timer. We're going to use a timer to control this fidgeting boolean. So scroll down until we see this comment player. I'm going to hit enter twice, add a comment with // and type timers. Now for the first timer, I'm going to say private float, and that's going to be fidget timer equals 2.0 f, 2 seconds. Underneath, let's do another one for later. Private float attack timer equals 0 f. So later on we're going to do an attack, but we're going to start with a fidget. So I've added these two variables here that we're going to use for timers. Okay, well, now I want you to scroll down until you see our private void update on line 159 or thereabouts. Now it has its own functions: jump in gravity, grounded check, and move. Under all these, when I hit enter a few times, we're going to start decrementing or counting our timers down. So what I want you to do is type the following: fidget timer minus equals time dot delta time. Now the reason we use something called delta time is because people tend to use monitors with different refresh rates, which means that they may be drawing more or less frames per second. Now that is a problem because that dictates how fast the code will operate. Delta time ensures that it remains consistent between each frame refresh, meaning that no matter whether you have a high hertz monitor or a high refresh rate, or you have a really bad PC, you're running on a toaster, it keeps it consistent. So what we're going to do here is start an if statement, if, and then open and closed round brackets, and inside those brackets we're going to say if the fidget timer is less than or equal to 0, and we're going to open our squiggly brackets underneath. Now we want to access that boolean that we created, so we're going to do underscore animator dot set bool, open closed round brackets, and inside those brackets it needs the name and the true or false. So we're going to say parentheses fidgeting, and then outside of the parentheses we go comma true, semicolon, enter. Fidget timer equals 5.0 f. Okay, we're going to set it back to a time of 5 seconds. And underneath, for our debug log, we could always also do a print brackets parentheses fidgeting triggered, semicolon. Great. Let's save that. I will minimize it. It will compile. And I'm going to show you what we've got. Now there will be an issue in that the fidget will start. Uh-oh. But we never turn the fidgeting ball off, right? So it's never going to exit that state. That is a key sign that has been turned on and never turned off. So what we need to do is jump back in here, go underneath this fidget timer. we need to add another if statement, saying if, round brackets, animator dot get float, so this time we're checking it, round brackets again, and inside those round brackets we say anim id speed. Now this is a variable set up by Unity in this script which reads the speed, and that's used for the blend tree. So we're going to say if that speed, and then go outside it between the round brackets, if that speed is greater than 0. So if your speed is greater than 0, you must be moving, right? Right, let's do our brackets. Then the animator dot set bool. Did I spell that right? I did not. The animator dot set bool, round brackets, fidgeting, comma, false. And again, this is optional. I could go print, round brackets, parentheses, fidgeting, disabled, semicolon, Control S to save and compile. And let's head back in and hit play. Right, the fidgeting has begun. It's kicking stones. Uh-oh. So there we see another problem. It's fixed in a sense, but also it's kind of weird, right? Why is it doing that? Why is it only stopping after a delay? And that's something that can be a pretty common sort of gotcha, is something called exit time. So what we want to do is go to our animator. In the animator, we have our fidget animation. And in the transition here, transitioning out back to our idle walk run blend, if we click on that, there is a little tick box called exit time. Now what exit time means is that the animation has to finish in full before it can exit, and that is not what you want. If we want to animation cancel our fidget, we tick that off. What that means is that at any time, as long as that condition is met, I can cancel the fidget immediately. So he'll start kicking, and then increase in speed, cancels it immediately. Very good. Kick, start kicking please, there we go, cancel. Now you should always test all your animations to make sure your state machine is running properly. So if he starts kicking, and I jump, uh-oh, what's going on there? That doesn't seem right. And what that is likely to be, if I go into my animator, it is probably because the exit on fidget to start jump is also using exit time, so I'll turn that off. So it's important for you to note that you want exit time on if you don't want something to be able to be cancelled mid-animation, but you want it off if you do. Okay, so now that I have ticked that off, he's kicking, immediate cancel. Cool. Very good. I always like to give a bit of a run around to just make sure everything feels nice.